Go grab. Hey everybody, welcome to another Tuesday Live with your hosts Jenn and Joe. We live in Florida, guys, so he's just grabbing a quick water. But yeah, today's topic is going to be about buying real estate, no money down deals. So this is really an awesome way to acquire properties without having to come out of pocket for a ton of money. Got your water?
I got my water, guys.
Gotta stay hydrated.
That's important because it's gonna be getting hot in here today. What we're gonna be going over, and this is the most exciting thing to me, is really buying real estate this way. I know many people are like, this is impossible. Is this really a thing? You know, and I understand why buying real estate with no money down is a big thing.
Yeah, right? And even in a lot of the popular Facebook groups, you know, I'll see people saying, looking for a no money down deal. And then other people kind of laughing at it like, yeah, aren't we all? Well, yes, but there are ways to be able to do this. And so we're going to share some of those ways that we are locking up deals with no money down.
Well, we are, our clients are, and I think it's really just comes into knowing how, why, who are these people? Right? What questions do we ask them? And we're going to go over some key factors of how you can do this too. And also, if you are in the Florida area, we are hosting our meetup tonight. So if you're watching this live and you want to come to our meetup, it is in Bradenton. We'd love to see you there. Details, I'm sure, are dropped all over Facebook and social media. So if you can't find it, keep looking. It's there. But it's in our Facebook group.
Come and find us.
Come get it. No, but it's going to be a great time because we're going to be talking about creative finance, you know, in this market and what's happening currently right now. But today's podcast, we're going to really be diving into how to buy deals with no money down.
No money down.
So the first thing is, I really think it starts off as a belief, right? You got to be able to believe this is possible. I know before, when we first got started, I would listen to people's like podcasts, myself, the YouTube channels. This was back in 2016. And I'd watch somebody say, well, I've got a deal and it's no money down. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Mm-hmm. Like, I just thought, well, maybe they can do it, but I have no clue. Right. So I think the first thing is.
And you stuck there until you were really starting to believe like you actually could.
Yeah, it was a huge mental roadblock for me because usually if you're going to buy the house, we were doing it, paying cash for the whole thing, fixing up these junkers and then refinancing out of them. But then a lot of our friends were putting down 20% or more to buy these houses. And I'm looking at the math and I'm like, you're going to put up all this money plus closing costs. That's a lot. And then you're financing it for the next 20, 30 years just to make a few $100 a month. It just seemed like there was a lot there to unpack. But we were doing it and we were chugging along, I would say very slowly, not going to retire at a young age by the way we were going. So once we found out that there was creative finance back in 2016, I'm watching these videos like on YouTube and they're like, well, we're getting this deal. It's no money down. So we're going to go over, first of all, like belief, like, yes, this does happen. It happens all of the time. So if other people are doing it, good news is that means you can too. You just have to know the right questions to ask. And we're going to go over those today. So take some notes if you're listening, if you're driving, watch this on the rerun. Definitely make sure, because we're going to go over some gold nuggets, because guys, when I'm looking at a deal, the first thing is I want to know how much money down do we need to get that deal to work, right? And that's what's super important. So the first off is the belief it could happen. If somebody could do it, you can too, if you just learn the right questions to ask. But what do these people look like, right? How do I identify these sellers? What I've noticed from the people that we've done deals with, their motivation level is pretty high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have a second house. They've already moved. They've inherited the home, right? Think of our first deal, Steve. You know, that deal, he inherited the home. Yep. It was his grandfather's home. He was renting it out. It wasn't a junker, and they needed to sell it, and they wanted to. So when we asked the questions, right, he made us the offer, which was great, but he wasn't really concerned about getting a big down payment. What was Steve? Do you remember his big selling point? What he was like all gung ho about?
Well, he had a few. He had inherited his grandfather's house, so it was super sentimental to him more than anything. He didn't want people like traipsing through and kind of like nitpicking all the little things that to get it market ready, to bring it up to like an exact like MLS listing standard. He would have probably had to change out a few little things. Like I think we did the carpet and, you know, just a little thing like that. But to him, like, he also lived over an hour away. He didn't want to have to worry about that. And he also was in an interesting situation letting his buddy live there. And so he wasn't making any money on the actual like rental he didn't want to be a landlord. He was an accidental landlord. So he had a couple of like highly motivating factors that led him to really just like when we actually went to that house and met him there. And I think that really sealed the deal when he realized that we were a younger, eager couple that, you know, had plans of turning it into a rent to own. And, you know, just kind of like knowing it was going into good hands is really his selling point, I think, to us. Our selling point to him, really. We sold ourselves of, you know, just being awesome people that would take care of his home that he cared about.
Bam.
And so, yeah, he didn't need any money at that moment in time. He didn't even want your $100 at McDonald's.
I know. And I think that's the point. So when people say real estate investors, you're only buying from people who are, you know, in financial troubles, right? He wasn't in financial troubles at all. The guy had his own house, had a job. This house was free and clear. He's collecting money every month just coming in. So it wasn't like he was in financial distress.
Nope. And then I know that when it was time to cash him out, he was really excited to then have that money for his daughter's wedding.
Yep.
And so he had already kind of, you know, made plans for the money that when we were able to do that, he was able to put it towards something really cool.
Yeah, he was like, this is perfect timing because my daughter is getting married and I have all these bills. I'm like, well, there you go. Good news.
And, you know, it sounds so crazy to think because I actually wrote a check back in the day and $500 every month went to Seller Steve. And so he was truly getting passive income because he didn't have to lift a finger. And that was the best part for him, I think.
Yeah. And that was straight cash flow for Steve because we, on top of that, pay taxes and the insurance. So by us paying that was just $500 clean. He was getting every month. So did we pay a pretty penny for the property? We didn't pay over value. He still gave us a deal on it, which was great, but we bought it with no money down. We had a 0% mortgage. We weren't paying any interest. And we just said, well, you know, we could give you X amount per month, which he was like, that would be fine. And he loved it. So was he in big financial stress? No,
not at all.
He had another property. He just wanted to sell. Yeah. But the key is when you're asking these questions, I think is what's crucial, because what I see is when I've learned from people who negotiate is don't put your foot in your mouth. Okay. Yeah. So don't assume that your sellers are always going to need half down or 75%
or
down.
Worse, give them a number. You know, I see a lot of people like just ultimately throwing out numbers just kind of blindly, like assuming, like you said, or maybe guessing or thinking like, oh,
what if I give you a half down?
If I give you 30 grand down, would that work? I'm sure Steve would have said, yeah, that'll work great. But, you know, especially in a house like that, like he didn't need it. And so, I mean, and again, that was maybe, it was like, you know, was it 90,000 we bought it for?
85.
Okay.
Yep.
But then also a couple years later, we bought a much larger home, a more expensive home, who had a mortgage on it with $60,000 of equity and still $100 down.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is the one we did on Nunda.
I know I'm probably jumping years, but it's just like it worked on both. And so I think it's really important to share. It's not always like a free and clear house. It can be. So
a seller in the situation that you're describing now, they had a mortgage, and this was another home they owned because it was an Airbnb. It was a big house. It was in a really nice neighborhood back in Rochester, New York. And it was one of the neighborhoods where like the mayor lived on the same street, the chief of the fire department, whatever it was, lived on the same street. So when the neighbors are saying that you're running an Airbnb out of this house, they were just getting grumpy, and he wanted to sell it. And he wanted to sell it quick and easy. So my purchase price was $290. He owed the bank $230. So we had $60,000 of equity coming to him, but he was willing to give us a 30-year term, and we bought it with only $100 down.
Yeah. And so I really think like the one thing in common with both Steve and the other gentleman was that they were highly motivated and not in some sort of like financial distress of, you know, needing ultimate cash right now.
Yep.
Payments were a factor, certainly in the second deal where he had to make mortgage payments. And so I think that was kind of the important part there where he
wanted that payment off his back.
He didn't want to have to worry about making the payment, but like he didn't need the $60,000 of equity. So again, don't assume that you have to throw out these high down payment numbers to your seller. Really ask the questions and stick to a script, especially if you're new, just asking the right questions. Because if you just start going off, you know, taking a left turn, you know, you're going to end up probably having to pay more than you would have if you just stuck to simple strategies.
Right. And I think that's why in our training, we go over this. It's the straight line approach. I know people know, some people have talked about this before. We're not the only ones, but it's great when we're asking sellers questions and keeping on track, because there are so many times where you're going to get off base. And I think that's really important. But when you're talking about these two different deals, one was a middle of the road house, I would say 1,1300 square foot house. The other one was a bigger, higher end house that was turnkey. It needed absolutely nothing. Like smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors, because we're OCD.
We always add those, yeah.
A ton of them, because it was a big house, because with the finished basement and the finished attic, it was almost 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So does it work on high end stuff too, where you can buy it with only $100 down? Absolutely. So if that's the case, and like I've got the one that we've talked about recently, we're not doing the deal because the payment's too high. But in Cape Coral, it's $1 million home.
Yeah, you were getting some comments on that last YouTube video there. You're going to get crushed on the Cape Coral deal. So newsflash, we did not write that deal up.
And it's a shame too, because the seller has a house. He wants $960 for it, which is probably the number. It's 3,000 square feet. It's on the water. It has a boat lift, the in-ground pool. It's a beautiful property, and he wants $960 for it. He's okay with $100 down. It's got a 2.99 rate. So everybody's like, oh my gosh, bell ringer, right? He wants $960. He owes $510. So he's got $450,000 of equity, and he's okay with doing the deal with no money down. So when a seller says yes, okay, I'm gonna help everybody here. Seller says, yes, I will do terms. How much money do we need down? $100. I love the deal already. What's it rent for versus what the payment will be? The challenge with this property, even at a 2.99 rate, the taxes and insurance are the kicker. Your insurance is almost $14,000 a year, and your taxes are like $16,000.
I almost wouldn't believe it if I didn't literally live here and see the just insanity that is happening left and right in Florida. So I think that's really important. We talk a lot about doing these deals virtually, but you've got to know your market.
Well, and I think that's key, because the payment with taxes and insurance, and at the 2.99 rate, the payment's like $48, almost $4,900 a month. That's including the HOA. And from what I could see, this is a bigger house. Most of the houses that are 2,000 square feet, they're renting for about $3,000. Some of the ones that are a little bit larger get $2,500, maybe $3,000 for the decent ones. This is almost a $5,000 payment.
And so why some people might say, well, why don't you just do an Airbnb?
I don't want to do that. I'm not being mean. Shout out to my Airbnb friends, but that's like another whole job. And that's just a big property. There's a lot of things going on. And just for me, that's not what I want to do. So unfortunately, in that situation, we told the seller, we can't do it. We can't do that deal. You most likely be better off listing with a market, with an agent. Because my other thing is, what if Cape Coral all of a sudden says you can't do Airbnb here anymore? And now I have to either sell the house, and if the market is fluctuating, the market in Cape Coral and Florida in general is softening up right now. Some people say it's crashing, but it happens slowly. But either way, if you have a long term and you're cash flowing, that's not a big deal. But if I'm only cash flowing on a short-term rental, if the market shifts where they no longer allow that there, and I can't do that, now I'm only reverting to maybe midterm if that's a thing, if not long-term, and I'm going to be losing a lot of money per month. Guys, we have a saying around here: if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So
yes, cash flow is important.
Yes. So that's what's important. Nick, good to see you representing upstate New York.
716.
But yeah, so I think that's the deal, guys. It's got to make sense. So once again, what is the biggest usually deal killer for me when I'm analyzing, people call it underwriting, whatever you want to call it. You're looking at the details, seeing if this deal makes sense, right? You're wrapping your head around it. For me, if I have a high cost of entry, that's going to really not excite me on the deal. So what does that mean? High cost of entry
means a couple of things for sure.
Right.
And I feel like the number one thing as an investor I look at is how much down does the seller need? From there, that's like the starting point for me. Well,
and you're right, because you hear us talking about buying a house with no money down or $100 down. So let's clarify what it is. First of all, we understand Can it happen and does it happen? Yes. Can it happen to you? If you ask enough people the same questions that we do, yes, it can, right? You just got to do it, put in the work. However, now that we understand that it is true, and I can believe we can do that, it comes down to underwriting the deals and analyzing it. And when you hear that we're buying a deal with $100 down, that doesn't mean I give somebody $100 and now we own the property, right? It's $100 down to the seller. Now, on top of that, we have to pay closing costs. And a part of the cost of acquisition, which means the cost of us buying the deal, is that we're going to pay our half, and a lot of the sellers too, because I can't expect them to come to the closing table with money to get rid of a house, right? Sometimes you can, but usually they don't want to write a check. So if you're expecting your seller to write a check at closing, you're going to close less deals, period. So we pay both sides of closing. So what's my cost of acquisition on a no money down deal? Closing costs.
Usually between like 6,000 to 8,000, I'd say, on the average price house that we buy between New York and Florida.
Yeah. And if we go to some of Undy's house where it's $1 million home, you're probably looking at 20 grand down.
Whose house?
The $1 million home in Cape Coral. That's going to be about $20,000 in closing costs.
Oh my goodness.
Plus you have to put an insurance policy on there.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why it's crucial to look for no money down to the seller deals.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start underwriting or analyzing, you start adding up. And then, like you said, insurance policy, closing costs. Then if you're marketing the property, maybe you have a team of people you're paying. You've got marketing costs that are factored into there somewhere. So,
and what if it's just me, right? Well, then if I'm going to rent it, right, I'm going to need a month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months to find my right renter. So I need to make sure I stack those payments to the side. If I'm going to use it as an Airbnb, do I have to furnish the property and stack a few months of payments on the side too? So when you start adding all of these things up, like what does it cost that I actually have to come up with to buy the deal? So when you hear us talking about $100 down, you pay the closing cost, you put an insurance policy on there, you stack 3 months worth of payments, you're taking care of lawn care, snow if you're up in New York, sometimes depending on the type of year, and all the other utilities that are on in the house when you're showing it. So at that point, that adds up, and no money down could be 10, 15, 20,000 quickly, especially if you have to paint the house or do any work to it too. So
do a quick clean out. There's always stuff in the garage.
Always things left behind, right? But when we're buying the property, so our sellers are generally not financially stressed. They may be in a way to where they need to get this payment off their back if they have one, right? And sometimes they don't really need a big chunk of cash. Sometimes they would love it.
Well, I was going to say, let's chat a little bit about that, because most sellers do say that they would need or would want a down payment. And so when that conversation starts happening, how do you handle a seller who says, maybe they have let's say $800,000 house and they're looking for 40, 50 grand down?
It happens. It happens all the time. I think it's just how you address it, and what the rest of the deal looks like would also be really important. So if I'm looking at an $800,000 home and the seller says, Joe, I could do this, but I need $50,000 down. Okay. Well, now lease visit. They said yes to terms. Number one, 50 grand plus the closing costs and insurance policy. So what's my cost of acquisition? We're going to figure that out, guys. And if you don't have our calculator, I think we have it right in the group. So if you want the deal analyzing calculator that lists all of this stuff out, we give it away for you guys. Go get it. It's right in our Creative Finance Playbook Facebook group. If you're not already a member, join that group. We drop tons of deals or stuff going on in there all the time. But the calculator is in there. So my cost of acquisition, I need to figure that out. Number two, what's my cash flow? Am I making a lot of money per month? Am I making no money per month? Because believe it or not, some of these properties in Florida don't cash flow. Sometimes it's even the opposite, like Undy's, right? That's his name. But it doesn't cash flow. So if I need to come up with $50,000 down to buy a deal that doesn't cash flow, financially, that just doesn't make good sense unless we're getting it at a humongous discount. And that's a whole different topic. Right. So
do you just stop talking to that seller then? If they're like, I need $40,000, $50,000 down on an $800,000 house, what does that look like then?
So we have two different categories. Yes to terms, needs a lot of money down, doesn't cash flow, and the section that does cash flow. Okay, so the ones that say yes, I will do seller financing of some sort, and they want a big chunk of money down, and the deal does cash flow, those are the ones we really truly want. The ones that don't cash flow, if the deal doesn't make a lot of sense, we usually try to ask, have they explored listing with a realtor? Now, we're not an agent, but sometimes it's in their best bet to try that route. In the challenge that I see right now, anybody bought a house in Florida, and we target other areas too, but we're seeing a lot of Florida leads right now, a lot of them. If somebody bought a house and their interest rate is in the 6s or 7s, odds are that deal does not cash flow unless they put a lot of money down, right? I'm seeing that most of those folks put very little to no money down. They have a 6 point something interest rate. You add in taxes and insurance and all the things, you look what the payment is, and it's $1,000 more than what it rents for. So even if they do say yes to seller financing, even if they do say yes with no money down, you would have to pay $1,000 more to do that deal, right? So we see these a lot. Unfortunately, those don't work for us. So we let them know their best bet is to talk with an agent about getting that property listed. Now, on the flip side, I'm still finding a lot that do have really low rates, that do cash flow well. Those are the deals that we want to keep a certainly close eye on. So if you say today, I need $50,000 down, the question we always ask, and just so everybody knows, so it's not really that complicated, but you're definitely going to want to either listen to this a few times or write it down. But more importantly, when you're going to ask a seller this, guys, you need to look yourself in the mirror, dead in the eyes, like 10 times and repeat it, because it's the conviction in your voice, which is so important. So, hey, Jen, if I were to pay your $850 price, it's in the range for what I'm looking for. I'll know more when I come out and see the house. Now, I typically buy with no money down, okay?
No, I'm going to need some money.
All right. Well, because I am paying all the closing costs and buying as is, if I were to give you a small down payment, what's the least you would need to make this deal work for you?
Yeah, but I've got all this equity here. My neighbor sold his house. They just made all this money. So, I'm looking for at least 45,000.
45,000. Can you do any better than that?
Well, I really wanted to pay off some credit cards, and I was hoping to put some money down on my next house. So not really. Like, that's really what I'm looking to get. Maybe I could go to like 40.
I'm sorry, my phone broke up. Did you just say 20?
No, I know you'd love to hear that, but I need probably like 35.
Okay, so if we're close to 20, you're thinking maybe that would work. You got to have some. Oh, sorry. It's this darn phone. Did you say 35?
He really does do this, guys. So you're hearing, even though we're kind of like role playing here, he does have some fun with the sellers. And I think that kind of breaks up it breaks the pattern of the heated negotiation. So obviously people need, and also the questions that you're asking or how you're wording it. It's not how much do you want, it's how much do you need is important.
Yeah. And it's powerful to know it's not what you say. It's also how you say it. So I'm not asking, I'm more of telling him a statement. Like, I typically buy with no money down, okay? Like, I know that ends in a question mark, but that's more of a statement than it is me asking them a question, although I do need them to answer it.
And there are times people literally just say okay.
So let me tell you a tip there. When that happens, like meeting a famous person for the first time, act like you've done it before. Don't be all like, right? So when they say okay, great.
I'll be like, oh my gosh, wow.
Oh my gosh, this works, right? Don't yell that into the phone.
Like, okay, I'm just taking down some notes here and get that back.
Yeah, so if I were to do that, when would you like to close, right? Some other questions that keep the conversation moving and flowing and really trying to narrow that down. So the key to this, and I really truly believe this, we're here to serve and we're truly here to help these sellers, but have a good time. Don't be I used to be so like just stuck on serious mode and not having a good time. And like, either we make a deal or we don't. Like, I was such a robot. And actually, like, when I started just talking with people and being a normal human and just talking to somebody, not like they're your friend, right? Because you're gonna, and I respect my friends, but there's obviously things I say to my friends that I probably wouldn't say to, somebody like that. So, but it's friendly. It's definitely a friendly conversation. And I think that's the big, the big goal there, guys, is try to figure out how can we help them. Now, maybe $45,000 down. I've moved people over $100,000 Somebody wants over 100, they take much, much less than that. So sometimes it doesn't happen in the first conversation.
Most of the times, yeah.
Most of the time, it's a months or weeks of follow-up before we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But it does happen, and it happens with
because too, I think what happens in that initial conversation is sometimes the sellers don't have their next home picked out, or maybe like I think back to especially 2020, where people were picking up from Buffalo, Rochester, and they're moving to North Carolina and Florida and all these southern places, and it was kind of like a dream in their head, and then talking to you started making that dream a reality. And so then it was like, okay, like Zeb, for example, in Henrietta, he only needed $7,000 to, and he didn't have any equity in his house, but he just needed that $7,000 to be able to move his family down, pack the U-Haul and go. And then we bought his house as is.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag. Not every deal we buy is with just $100 down, right?
Well, yeah. Sorry.
The topic. No. Well, you
sorry to break that to you.
I'm loving that you brought it up because everybody's gonna hear this and they're gonna leave saying, "I could only buy with $100 down."
Right,
Jen said that, right? I heard her on a podcast one time. So, okay, there are deals that we'll do where, they might need $5,000 or $7,000. What I'm saying is, we're not putting 20% down. Right. We're not putting down half. So when I see somebody offering like, oh, I have a seller finance deal and, they want way more than it's worth and they'll do it with half down at us. I'm like, get away.
Right.
Right. So yeah, if
penciling in the $7,000 on that deal made total sense, especially because of our exit strategy.
Well, first of all, we bought a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood and it's close to like the college and that area just continues to skyrocket.
Right.
We didn't have a term length because he just bought it and was looking to sell it. He only had a little bit of equity, wanted a quick, fast, easy sale. This is one of the houses that we bought. I'm not going to even be weird when I say this, but it didn't really have a smell to it. Like we bought some houses that had maybe dogs or pets or cats. And I've got a dog, but she's a small one, right? But some of these houses, they got a collection of dogs or cats, and they'll tend to leave smells, especially on like carpet and things like that. This house didn't. If anything, we bought it as is, and they left their kids' laptops behind, which were like the schools that we went back and returned them. But really, if you think of that deal where real estate is made profits, it's over time. Mm-hmm. It's over a long time. And what we own that house for and what we bought it for back then compared to what it's worth now are completely two different worlds. Mm-hmm. Right. So when is a good time to start buying these deals where if you're buying them right,
and those rates.
Oh my gosh.
Interest rates.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that's the point. If you're buying deals, if you're buying them right, it's always a good time to buy.
In an entirely different podcast episode, but like again, the seller was able to go buy his own mortgage, get a new mortgage on a new home because of the way we buy with the wrap. And I think that was important too.
Yeah, because he moved to North Carolina. He bought his new house. He said, hey, the mortgage company said there's this mortgage on my credit report still. And he knew. And he's like, and I knew because that's how you guys bought it, but they need help. We showed him how we bought it. He was able to get his next house. Then he sold that house, if you remember, bought his new house. He's like, this is the last time we're going to need it, but they're asking for those same papers again. And we did it again, and he was fine. And now he promises he's not moving again, which I don't care if he does. It's easy peasy on our end. And he's wonderful. So these deals, you have to be mindful. These are long-term relationships with these folks. They're going to reach out to you down the road. And it's great to make sure that when you're in a long-term relationship, it's somebody that you actually like doing business with too. And that's truly important. From time to time, we do have a seller who reaches out to us and they're just, right? And if you have to talk to those people for the next 10, 15, 20 years, that could be a challenge. So just keep in mind, it is a long-term relationship you're building with these sellers. And luckily, the sellers that we have, they're fantastic. And I get they moved to Florida. And like, this is the best move ever. I'm like, yeah, we moved here too. And they're like, this is great, right? So it's really, really cool to have these people. And they check on their old house. So they're going to say, oh, I saw the new pictures on Zillow. You guys did a great job. And it is really, really cool. So I definitely enjoyed that part of it. But if you're able to buy these deals with very little to no cash down, because I think of when I bought my first house, I came up with a whole bunch of money to buy the house that we lived in. But when we're buying these deals with just closing costs, and most of them are turnkey, guys, that you could actually start renting out pretty quickly, where you don't have to spend your whole summer rehabbing the house or things like that.
Right. Like the Jacksonville condo that we just closed on and are currently looking for the rent-to-own buyer. He didn't need any money.
And I thought he was old.
I know, he's like our age.
I didn't know that.
That's why he wants a bigger area, probably, to like
have
more space.
I never talked to him. Lexi did. She wrapped up the deal herself. I didn't get involved with it. I was like, I got a deal. Seller said yes to terms. He's okay with no money down. He wants to sell his condo for basically what he owes on it. And he wants to buy a house that has a yard. He likes doing yard work. And I was like, I'm not picking him. His name was like Donald or something.
You really don't know his name?
No. What was it?
Peter.
There you go. All right. Not picking up Peters. I love Pete, but so either way, he wanted to get
he wants some yard and some space. And so, yeah, but that was the most recent $100 down. And just, but again, like you said, you're coming out of pocket with the closing costs, and then shopping insurance is really important in Florida. You might have to go through a couple different quotes to make sure you get something that makes sense.
I like the way you looked at me when I didn't know his first name, but guys, when you have the right systems in place, I would make all of these calls. Can't wait till
I don't know. I'm sorry.
But I was the one that made all these calls.
You also don't know what you're going to have for lunch or dinner every day. So there's that.
This is also true. But getting on these calls, learning how to do it, and then eventually you can replace yourself and you'll have other people making the calls for you. And I know when one of our first coaches said this, he was like, now I look at deals and I just make decisions. And if I like the deal or not, or go do this, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. Maybe one day. And then here we are. Like, I talked to Lexi. My whole phone is blown up with text messages from her talking about some of the deals that we're working today. So it's just really
got any $100 down deals in the works?
Okay. Got Chris up a bit on term length and explain the property renting right now is around what he pays. We would buy with no money down. Great job, Lexi. Woo-hoo. He said his wife would need some money to move. He's saying $10K bottom line now, but I think it's negotiable. He went down to $5K on price and now is looking for 10 grand down, 430 price, 7-year term. We definitely need to get the down payment closer to zero. Lexi, if you're listening right now, shout out to you. You're probably making calls. But like, there you go. This is a text message we just got. So,
was it a Florida house?
It is a Florida house, and it's like turnkey, and it's just in Kissimmee, which is outside of Orlando. Nice house, nice neighborhood. Doesn't need anything.
It's still kind of a booming area too. I keep saying like Ocala, Orlando, like even though south of us, kind of doing what it's doing, dipping a little bit.
Well, I think in the middle of the state, the insurance isn't as bad.
Right.
When you're on the coast, just insurance gets to be.
These darn hurricanes keep ripping through.
Fun fact, by the way, between Orlando and Ocala, which is like the more of the middle of the state, it's actually, there's a bunch of hills. And I did not know this until I actually looked it up, but there are houses there that have basements.
You told me that.
Which is in Florida, guys, we came from upstate New York. Like every house had a basement.
There was always a basement, which, man, when you don't have one, you realize how cool it was to have one.
Oh, it was the best. That's where you stored all your stuff.
Now the garage is like jam-packed. But
well, they got the rafters, so you got to be really creative there. But, you lose out on all of that space. But in part of the state of Florida, they have basements. It does get still stormy, but by the time big hurricanes move all through the land, it slows it down. So insurance isn't as bad. Mm-hmm. You're still living that Florida dream. You're in the middle of the state, which means you're about an hour and a half away from each coast-ish, right? Mm-hmm. Is it even that far? Probably about an hour and a half.
So some of you listening might be like, well, how are you guys even finding these sellers? And I think that if you're brand new here, then welcome. I'm so glad you found us. But we love Facebook. And so if you're definitely a frequent listener, you're going to know where I'm going with this. But Facebook is such a gem for so many reasons. There's multiple layers and levels to Facebook. So, hey, Britt and Brittany knows firsthand. Shout out to Brittany Krasnerick. She worked on our team for a while and then decided to go full-time, bring her husband home. We did lots of podcasts with them. And so make sure you check them out on our YouTube channel. 16 deals they did, guys, last year with $0 on marketing, all because of social media. And I know we have all different places, TikTok and Instagram.
First of all, shout out Brittany. That's killer, guys.
And YouTube, yes. Woo-hoo, Britt. But, when it comes to Facebook, guys, this just it's an easy platform for everybody and their mother and their grandmother and their aunt and uncle to figure out. And so if you can just really get great at being strict with your time when you're going on your phone, tune out all the garbage and all the noise and just hone in on people that are waiting for you to make a post about how you could help them buy their house. So we have a great question here. It's exactly where I was going with it. How do I find buy, sell, trade community groups in Facebook? Is that a Facebook marketplace? So again, we are going to go live. That'll be our next webinar. Date to be announced here. So type live. Joe dropped that last time. So we're getting ready to go live. Joe's going to come live and show you exactly where to find these groups. But to kind of give you a little spill the beans here, you want to say your little tip, like a quick tip here?
Yeah, I like to join groups that have a lot of people in them. I'm just telling you guys, you're going to want to see, we're going to do this webinar where I'm actually going to do it live in front of everybody. I'm going to look for the groups. I'm going to show you how we do it. I'm going to show you exactly how I post into it, how we even what we call seasoning the group, how we handle those things. And then even too, I'll be posting what we do. So you'll see leads coming in live during this webinar. So if you want to see that from legitimately 1 hour from when we start till the end of it, we're going to have probably some incoming leads in 1 hour, and I'll pick a new place, right? So we can check anywhere we want across the country.
That'll be fun.
Which is really, really fun. So guys, if you want to do that, I see sign me up.
Yeah.
Write that down in the comments and we will make sure you get the invite for that webinar. But it's going to be great, guys, because let me tell you, if you are not on this social media thing yet, and I wasn't, so thank you to my wife.
You're so welcome.
Man, I was really messing up.
He used to make fun of me a little bit, like, you're wasting time on that social media place, right? And so, you know, the important part is you can waste your time. And he was absolutely right. If you're just sit there scrolling, or you go into the little funk of, oh, look at what everybody else is doing. Oh, she's on another vacation, or wow, lucky them. They went and got this new boat. Well, stop that mindset and start looking for houses and see how you can help these people. And so Marketplace is its own gem. We've bought land off of Marketplace totally unintentionally. And so you can hit up people who have things for sale, ideally houses or land, or join these Facebook groups and you go and post. Guys, we have it on our website, creativefinanceplaybook.com. We give you the post to use. We give you the 10 magic questions to ask. And from there, people are going to start reaching out to you. So that's why we also say have it on your Facebook page that you buy and sell houses, you know, and let the world know what you do. And so you can't ever, you know, be too loud with it, because we are all inundated all day, every day with, you know, big companies constantly running their ads to everybody else just post some, you know, dog photos and back to school things. So there's lots happening. So you just got to keep showing up daily. So living proof, Brittany. Oh my gosh. Woo! She's saying right here.
Bam!
Thanks. Facebook is a gold mine. Working on another 0% deal on 2 houses from Facebook leads.
I'm telling you.
I mean, seriously.
That team, you guys, you and your husband, the kids, are a bunch of rock stars, guys. And really, when we first met Brittany, she had a full-time job and
very busy.
She was probably one of the most busy people we knew. And so, but she took the necessary steps. She put the time, she put the effort, and she talked to a lot of sellers and asked the right questions. And this is how it happened. So what did she do? Especially in the beginning, she took some even messy action, right? There was some calls that we'd get on together, right? And I remember our first call, the seller actually liked talking to her, of course, more than me. So I could have just shut up and let her handle it. She just was like, what do I say? I'm like, you got this, go. Because he doesn't want to talk to me. So building rapport is the big part, right? Building rapport, having some feelings of what's going on, ask the sellers the right questions, have the seller make you the offer, and you'd be quite surprised on how this could really end up for you. So the big thing I would say, how do we find these deals? Well, we market what we do. So the more leads that you have, the more picky and choosy, and the more chances of coming across these deals. So if you get 1 lead a year, you're probably going to take you a long time to find that kind of deal. You get 1 of these leads every hour, well, then maybe now you're going to start turning it up, right? So the key to it is having leads coming in. So here's the big thing. Like if you have to be posting on your social media daily that you buy houses, like daily, because I've got friends who I've been doing this for 24 years and they'll reach out like, I didn't know you were in real estate. I'm like, Oh my gosh.
It's so possible because, like I said, we get inundated all day, every day, and there's multiple channels. So people are constantly bopping all around. So that's why we say you definitely want to share that you buy in, real estate, how you help people out, seller stories. So yeah, Brittany, if you want, like share your page too, and there people can come kind of check you guys out. Specifically, the seller told her that he wanted to work with them because he checked out their social media and they liked how they share about their business and they involve their kids. So, if you have children, I mean, I know everybody has different comfort levels. So I know we like to share the kids, but we always have them in the video or photos with us. But, that family aspect, like that hasn't died. Even though big corporations come and they kind of seem to take over, there's still a lot of mom and pops out there and people love that. They relate to it. And that's who they feel most comfortable, selling their houses to, I think, a lot of times.
Well, and I did it in our coaching group, so I'm not going to do it here. But I found right with me. I found somebody who had their own Facebook page and it was like Bob buys houses.
Oh, right.
Okay. And Bob had like one picture of Bob and that was it. You go through his whole profile, it was nothing. Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine if you saw a post and it was from Bob who buys houses and you're like, well, let me check out Bob. And you go to his Facebook page and there's nothing on there. One picture of Bob, right? And there's
no cover photo. Like
no cover.
Best.
It was great. It was
Right.
one picture of him, Bob buys houses or whatever it was. I still have it. I'm not going to show it because I don't want to pick on Bob.
And even if you haven't done a deal yet, guys, that's not the point. The point is like you need to build the know, like, and trust factor so people can start understanding that you're a real person, that you're not some fake account, and that you're here truly helping them. And so how do you do that? Like you share pictures on your walk, right? We've got a couple clients that are doing this 5 mile a walk a day. And I just love seeing their sunrise photos or maybe their sunset. I'm not sure, but just like seeing into people's worlds, that's what social media could really connect people with.
5 miles a day.
That's what they're doing. Yeah.
So we'd have to do that trip that we just did this morning 2 more times.
Mm-hmm.
You better do it early. It gets hot down here, boy. Awesome. Shout out to you guys for doing that.
Yeah.
So but that's really the key. Get some leads coming in. And I think that's crucial because, the whole world, you don't know who's a scam, who's real, who's fake. There's AI.
Yeah.
There's people all over trying to pretend there's somebody not, right?
Know.
So many fake accounts. So how do we break through all of that? There was a fascinating book that I learned from marketing back in the early 2000s called Purple Cow. And the purple cow theory was when you see a whole field of cows, at first it's really neat, but then over time of seeing this, it all starts to blend in. Well, that's what social media is like now. It's just inundating us.
Yeah.
So how do you be that one purple cow in the whole mix? Well, that's going to be really easy, guys. It's just by taking it back to basic humans. I know this sounds crazy, but just letting people see that you're real these days, that's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are like, well, I'm shy to post on social media. And I get it. You got to get over your fears.
And you don't need a fancy background. You don't have to, a ring light's cool, gives you a little extra light, but you don't have to have this professional setup. Like people really enjoy just the normal everyday things. And so we kind of
even when you said we need a studio here, we're just coming live, guys.
We are coming live. Yeah. Like you got our kids were just drawing on that. It said like Spider Gwen back there. So you might see a little remnants of that. That's what my daughter's going to be for Halloween. But yeah, real life, the kids, the dogs, something could happen at any given time. And so, at some point, sometimes, maybe if you've built a business or a brand, you could upgrade to a studio. That's really awesome. But also don't use that as an excuse as to why you can't. And I think that's always been why we have gotten to where we are. Because no matter what, we just do it.
Well, we kept it real. And it's even the beginning because when we would go live in the very beginning, we'd go live on our rent to own page. Hey, Jim, good to see you.
Yeah.
Total rock star right there, him and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Love these guys. And but we were going live on our rent to own page.
And I just made it a habit. Every Thursday at 3:00, I just picked a time and place. And so we would just show up every single week and we were able to answer people's questions, and you could do that in your page too. And so it was one of our coaches at the time said, well, you guys are doing it for your rent to own. Like, why don't you do it for your buying page too?
We're like, whoa.
I'm like, what a novel idea. Right. And so you may have heard this story before, but this poor guy here, I made him go live because I typed up a script and I told Facebook and I created an event. And I called it Home Talk Tuesday, and we went live. And he had one working lung at the time.
I didn't know. I just left the doctors, and
Collapse lung.
They didn't tell me because my doctor was on lunch. So they said, call your doctor after. But Jen had this thing scheduled. So it didn't matter what was going on. So if you see the first one on her page, Jen Buys, where we were on the back deck, I had sunglasses on.
I was wearing a pink shirt. And it was June of 2020.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember they were like, you have sunglasses on.
Oh, yeah. So we then would share it into Facebook groups. And then we would get all these crazy comments. One lady said, because we were wearing sunglasses, we were shady, we were scamming people. And we're like, lady, we're literally like coming live to you talking about how we're helping people.
On our back deck when it's summertime, sunny out.
So you're going to get the comments, but you know, I feel like once you've had a handful of them, you just kind of ignore them, because what I think about are all of the sellers we've been able to reach through social media, all of the people that were in situations that might have had different outcomes if we weren't there to be able to help them out.
Yeah. I mean, I think of so many different examples where when you understand question number 2 on our script, why are you selling? There you go, guys. I'm giving away the details. It's on there. Go get it anyways. It's on our website. creativefinanceplaybook.com. Bam.
Boom.
But that's our script, the one that we use. But question number 2, we want to find out, like, why are you selling? And when you hear some of these stories of what some of these situations they're going through, now don't get me wrong, some people are like, oh, I'm not looking to sell, I just want to know what your price is. I'm like, well, I mean,
or here's my street name, give me an offer.
Yeah, it's a 1,500 square foot house on this street in this zip code. What's your best price? And like, I don't even know what your house looks like. Is it a hole in the ground, or is the whole thing gorgeous? Right. So you'll have some of that. But question 2 is one of my most important. Why are you selling? Because now you're figuring out their situation, knowing all of the things that we know, and understanding their situation. Is this a good fit? Can we help these people?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes if they don't want to know what we're going to pay for it, they just want to know what it's worth. Well, then maybe I turn them on to an appraisal. Go get an appraisal from an appraiser if you're just that curious. That's really important. But there's going to be many times where you're going to sense they're motivated, right? I inherited this home. Or the one that we're talking to right now, that Lexi, I was hoping she would write up this morning, but he says that we're going to do it tomorrow morning, which is right here in Bradenton. And the guy's got the house. By? Yeah. He's got a house. It's a fixer-upper. It needs some work. It needs a roof. It's going to need the inside done. It's going to need a tent over it because it has termites. He understands that it needs that. He wants to sell it as is, and he wants to have cash in his pocket when it's ready to close. So this one to us is a fixer-upper. He won't do terms. He needs cash, but he's giving it to us at a big discount, where this one makes sense to now do a fix and flip, or we could, wholesale it to a cash buyer, because we know a bunch in the area looking for a deal like this too. But why does he want to sell? He's like, I'm moving. I need to be gone by October.
I'm thinking he had a divorce too, didn't he?
Well, I don't know, because he had to run it by his girlfriend. So maybe.
I thought I read he had a divorce. I don't know. Could have been a different one, but never know.
We do see that a lot.
Yeah. All right. Quick question. Sorry for repeating. Hey, no sorries. It's what we're here for. We're able to chit chat through things that are happening. Tony and Angie, nice to see you. Are investors getting killed with existing houses there when the insurance and taxes reset and the house is still within the lease contract?
So that's a great question, Tony. I would imagine in some situations, absolutely they are. When your insurance runs out here and you find out it went from $4,000 a year to $8,000 a year, in some of these situations, or even more, it can be a challenge. And one of our clients in our coaching group, he's an asset manager for a big bunch of investors, and they have some really big multifamily, like 80 units and things like that all over Florida. And so he goes a lot of these places, and one of the properties they're struggling in now, I think it's like 70 something units. I forgot the number of units, but I know it's a lot. It's under 100 though. He says the insurance policy went from $50,000 a year to $200,000 a year when they had to renew it. Tell me that don't mess with your cash flow. That's happening right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yes, to answer your question, Tony, that is definitely going to be a thing. So you have to be really mindful of making sure, when you're doing a lease, you're not doing a very long-term lease, right? And then on the flip side of that, you want to make sure that on these properties, you're making sure you've got enough built-in cash flow. So if there is a change, it might eat away some of your cash flow, but you still are going to be getting some money coming in. So on a deal where you're only making a few $100 a month, sometimes that could be tight, and it could get even worse if there's a reassessment.
Mhm.
Maybe the property values went up. More likely, it's a lot of it where we're seeing now is that the insurance is just crushing people.
And I think that's where your risk tolerance comes into play. And for us, that's why we kind of always stick to the single family home, rent to own is our exit strategy, and just being very particular about, like you said, like the cost of entry and then that cash flow, which is painful because there's so many beautiful homes that, like you keep talking about the one in Cape Coral, that you want to help this person out. But if it's not making sense monetarily, like again, we're a business. And so we have to be able to make money.
Yeah, because I think of the one in Palm Bay, Florida. It's in like the Melbourne, Florida area. So that's in the east coast of Florida. The guy's got a 3.6 rate. It's a 2,500 square foot house. It needs nothing. 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. The only thing, it doesn't have a pool. No big deal though. House is gorgeous. Needs nothing. He has really no equity because he just bought it.
I know that's when we're like, do we do a midterm rental?
Yeah, well, he bought it, I think it was like 2 years ago. So he didn't just buy it, but he doesn't have much equity and he wants to sell it now. And when we're looking at it, the payment with taxes and insurance is like $2,400 and it only rents for a little over $2,000. So that's already tight. And an insurance increase comes in where now it jumps up that monthly payment even higher. You could be losing. And I know people who, accidentally have gotten themselves into some really tough deals. Same thing if you go and buy a property. Here's one thing they don't talk about enough. And I know this is about 0% down, or there's no money down. Everybody who talks about buying deals creative finance. Everybody. Okay, so I'm going to call everybody out.
Okay. Maybe we should get Ron back on our podcast.
When you buy a house, and I'll have a seller here, for example, in Florida, they want $500 or $450 for their house, $450, and they're open to terms, right? But they bought it 10, 12 years ago or whatever, and the house is assessed at $180,000. Well, before you say yes to that deal, you need to call the county and ask them that if you're going to buy this house at the new price, when will it get reassessed? And what will my taxes go to? And then on the flip side, if it's going to be a rental and it's not going to get the homestead discount, where if it's your primary residence, they give you a discount on your taxes, you're also going to lose that in a lot of these situations. And I've known some real investors who are just trying to figure it out on their own, and they don't have somebody looking over their shoulder to make sure that they're covering all of their bases, which is super important. And next thing you know, the house that was assessed for 180 gets reassessed in a year or however long, and it's no longer homestead, so they lose that discount too, and their taxes go up dramatically. Which now I know one investor I think of on the back of my head. He bought 5 properties this way. Not one of our clients. I don't know where he learned this from, but he didn't check all of his boxes. He bought 5 properties this way and was cash flowing a few hundred a door. And then once this happened, he was losing a few hundred a door on 5 different properties at once. So when you think you're going to make, $2,000 a month off all of your properties, and now you're losing $2,000 a month, that's a $4,000 swing. That's a big, big number. Yeah. So you got to keep that in consideration, guys, when you're buying these deals. Make sure you're covering all of your bases and crossing your T's. That's super important.
It is. Yeah. And like you said, it's one of those things where you don't really think about it because people get really excited. And I don't know, it was almost like the roaring 20s, I feel like, when between 2021, 2022, like everybody was moving to Florida, including us. Everybody was buying up all the properties. Like there were so many deals flying around left and right. The interest rates were super low. Insurance wasn't crazy. And then now, like 2 years later, it's super extra important to make sure that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, because 3 years ago, that house that's now $450 was $180. So it was taxed at $180. It was insured at that price. And now that it's $450, well, the taxes are the town's gonna want their money. So if it's selling for $450, we're gonna reappraise it. Yeah. Not appraise it. Assess it. I apologize. Yeah. They're gonna do a new assessment. Your taxes are gonna go up. So will the insurance now, because they're insuring it at a higher price too. So just things to be mindful of. But this is why also too, we do invest in Florida. We do invest in other places too. And like in upstate New York, it's got its own bits and challenges, right? Mm-hmm. There's bad weather with snow. The landlord laws aren't as friendly sometimes in New York. But I will tell you, there are people leaving New York who are moving to Florida who want to sell their house, and we're able to help them too, because we do find a lot of that too. That was probably our biggest reason why when we were doing deals in New York, they're like, I want to leave because of the taxes and the weather, and we're moving down south. So many people that we bought their house way back, they were moving out of state. So to us, I still love buying up there. We still are buying up there and continue. So just be mindful. Sometimes don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Well, that's why I love that, like in our small group coaching program, we have our daily Zoom calls where people are bringing their deals for us to kind of chat through and talk about all the ins and outs, because having that safe spot to really take a good look, like open up the hood of a car, right? And kind of inspect, like, what are the ins and outs of this? So if and when XYZ happens, you really want to have all your bases covered.
Well, and I think that's crucial too. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. And that deal in Cape Coral for one, like I had to sit there and like, I wish I could bounce this off someone's head. And if I'm missing something,
right?
Because how do you pass on that kind of deal? Beautiful house, $1 million house for no money down, 2.99 rate, doesn't need a thing, ready to go. And I'm sitting here scratching my head. Is there something wrong with me? Like, why am I not saying like, oh my gosh, yeah, well, obviously because there's not money to be made in the deal. It looks fantastic, but sometimes what they say is what? Good from far, but far from good.
Right. And I think a lot of people too are like, well, if it's not cash flowing, just find a homestead buyer. But that does require a lot of legwork, and it's not impossible, but you're going to spend a lot of time making sure that you can get that right person in the door.
Yeah. So if you have questions about like what our group is like, or if you want to talk more, getting a personalized some attention of how do you generate these leads yourself? What are the magic questions we ask them? How do you analyze these deals? And, we do that all together in our coaching group. And I think that's why it's been so successful with our clients, because we're in a small community, bunch of rock stars, all helping you get through each necessary step. And I figure, when you get down this big process that you helped, because like, I remember in the beginning, I'd ramble all this stuff and you're like, well, what are terms, right? It was crazy.
Well, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it. Again, English background, 4 years of undergrad with all these silly classes, and then a master's degree in education. But, none of that helps me when it comes to this. So it took me an extra step or two to really wrap my head around what a rep mortgage was and all of that. But, I got a shout out too. Like, I love that we even have our private WhatsApp community. Here we are going live, talking to the public, and inside this group, questions are being asked and questions are getting answered. And, when we hop off of this, we're able to, put in some attention in there. But, I just think that there's so much power in aligning yourself with those who are here to really help others, to put others first, to be able to also put money in your own pocket, but know that if you are doing the right thing, it always comes back to you.
Man, they're going over LLC entity structures. But bravo, guys. Yeah. This is really cool.
We have a rock star community. I mean, if we could toot our horn here, I freaking love our small group.
Well, I think it's because, we're with them 5 days a week.
Yeah.
We're on a Zoom. We're calling your leads for you so you could see how it's done. We're teaching how to do it virtually because that's what we do.
While homeschooling 2 kiddos who keep running by the door. I'm not sure what they're up to.
And we surround them with a ton of support. So I think that's the key, where I think, a lot of these programs where they just want to plop you in front of some videos and say, go out and good luck. It's
almost overwhelming. You're in a sea of things of like which thing to start on. So but yeah, guys, if this is something you want to hear more about, next Tuesday, we actually have some rockstar clients coming in. Oh my gosh. Speaking of
right here,
we have Jackson and Lisa Smith joining us next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern live. And guys, we are going to, I don't even want to like share their story yet because it's so incredible, but wait until you hear this one. He and Lisa have done so much for years now, and they are truly seeing the fruits of their labor. So if you really want an incredible hero's journey, tune in next Tuesday, because I don't have favorites, but man, they're an awesome power couple.
I'll tell you. And this story that they have about this deal that they just did, and how Jackson was in, I don't even want to spoil it. If I start blabbing, you guys are gonna next week.
So set your alarms, 2 p.m. Eastern. You'll be able to ask Jackson and Lisa live questions. They agreed to come live on our podcast with us. We're super pumped for it. And so if you can't be there, I'm so sorry, but catch the replay. But if you can, join us. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on YouTube. Creative Finance Playbook. And if you have any questions, that's Joe's actual cell phone number here, 585-207-2240. And he's waiting for you to give him a call.
I got a text right now, actually. Somebody's asking me, do y'all do creative financing?
A little bit. So if you are local, again, tonight is our meetup here in Bradenton. Love to see you. If not, then we're going to be having another one in October. Otherwise, because I'm heading to San Diego next month. Just a
next
few
month. It's like 2 weeks away, girl.
It's September. Yeah, September 9th, I believe it is. On Monday. It's for women's investing, but I'll be meeting some local some community members out there as well. So definitely hit us up. Text Joe if you are.
And then after that, you're going to Utah.
Then I'm going to the Wire Community Retreat in Utah, which I'm a little nervous because it's like cold there.
Only at night, honey. Not
58
everywhere
sounds cold.
Not everywhere's 100 like here.
Yeah, actually, it'll probably be a nice reprieve. So if you're not doing deals, what are you waiting for? It's changed our lives, and I couldn't be more grateful. This morning, we had a nice family walk, and no one was rushing out the door to school or work, and it was glorious. And so it is a lot of work, but it is worth it. I promise, if you just keep going and you don't quit, you will see results.
Bam.
All right, till next time, guys. We'll see you later.
See you guys.
Bye.